In the spring of 1925, a 16-year-old named Alfred Lion walked into the Admiral's Palace in Berlin. He was carrying a pair of roller skates, expecting to find the building's famous indoor rink. Instead of an empty rink, he walked into a live performance by Sam Wooding and his orchestra, an African-American jazz ensemble passing through the city. Lion had never heard anything like it. He later recalled that the beat bypassed his conscious mind and got directly into his bones. He immediately bought every Wooding record he could find, the first entries in a collection that would follow him into exile. 14 years later, Lion would flee the Nazi regime, land in New York, and co-found Blue Note Records, one of the most important jazz labels in history. If you picture 1920s Germany, you probably imagine this: a golden age of avant-garde cabarets, boundary-pushing stage revues, and endless nightlife. But that glittering image hides a much darker reality. The Weimar Republic was a defeated empire, still processing the immense physical and psychological trauma of the First World War. This is a 1 trillion mark German banknote. By 1923, hyperinflation had so thoroughly devastated the German economy that currency became worthless paper. The middle class was entirely wiped out. Germany's turn towards jazz was the frantic reaction of a fractured society, desperate to fill an identity vacuum. When that music crossed the Atlantic, it didn't land on a blank slate. Germany absorbed jazz through a dark historical prism, colored by centuries of rigid tradition. To understand how that prism worked, you have to look at the gatekeepers of German culture, families like the von Wetterkops. Dating back to 1637, this noble family spent 300 years producing military officers, powerful jurists, and high-ranking advisors for the aristocracy. This long line of elites firmly believed they had the absolute right to determine which pieces of the modern world were allowed into German high culture. You could not invent a starker contrast. The freewheeling, improvisational music born from the Black American experience was now being judged and filtered by the descendants of European nobility. In the 1920s, that cultural filter took the shape of Hermann von Wetterkop. He left a path in the military to become the highly influential editor of the avant-garde art magazine, Der Querschnitt. As a tastemaker, he published and promoted the vanguard of modernism, filling his pages with the work of icons like Pablo Picasso. Yet his taste in art masked severe personal prejudices. He openly despised older, traditional literature, but his private diaries and conversations were filled with virulent anti-Semitism. He also held deep admiration for rising authoritarian regimes, traveling to Italy multiple times in the 1930s to personally visit Benito Mussolini. So when Wetterkop consumed black jazz, he didn't view the musicians as equals. He wrote about the music through a highly racialized, social Darwinist lens. For Wetterkop and the German elite, black music was an exotic, mechanical thrill. They used the art form to project their own racial anxieties about a rapidly modernizing world. That fragile cultural ecosystem collapsed entirely when the Nazi regime took power and demanded absolute cultural purity. Wetterkop actually joined the Nazi Party in May 1933. But the very state he supported immediately targeted his life's work. The modern art and texts he had spent the last decade championing were suddenly classified by the regime as harmful and undesirable literature. By 1939, Joseph Goebbels personally signed the justification to have Wetterkop's books on modern art and culture confiscated and destroyed. With his publishing career dismantled, the von Wetterkop family lineage reverted right back to its military roots. Hermann's nephew, Magnus, became a Generalleutnant in the Wehrmacht during the Second World War. Hermann tried to control and weaponize modern culture to fit his own worldview, only to find himself erased by a regime that shared his exact prejudices. Beneath the surface of the cabaret and the concert hall, the Jazz Republic functioned as a fierce ideological battleground. The extreme contradictions of Hermann von Wetterkop, a man who published Picasso while visiting Mussolini, perfectly mirror the fractures that tore the Republic apart. When a piece of global culture crosses a border, the receiving nation doesn't merely adopt it, it forces that nation's deepest prejudices, traditions, and fears out into the open.